9 Habits No One Sees from Thai Buddhist Nuns to Achieve Inner Peace and Flat Belly, Full Narrative Story. Sarah woke at 6:47 a.m. to the sound of Bangkok traffic already thick below her apartment window. 8 hours in bed. Her phone confirmed it. 8 full hours. Yet her body felt like she'd been awake all night, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, mind already racing through emails she hadn't opened yet. She pressed her palm against her belly. Still swollen. Still soft, in a way that felt wrong, no matter how many salads she'd forced down or how many YouTube workouts she'd half finished in her living room. She sat up slowly, the mattress expensive and plush beneath her. Bought specifically because the internet promised it would fix her sleep. It hadn't. Nothing had. Not the magnesium supplements, not the sleep app with rain sounds. Not the blackout curtains or the white noise machine or the meditation course she'd downloaded and abandoned after 3 sessions. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection looked older than 38. Dark circles, fine lines deepening around her eyes. She'd moved to Bangkok 6 months ago for work, remote consulting, flexible hours, the dream everyone talked about. Except the flexibility meant she worked until midnight. The dream meant she ordered Grab food at 11 p.m. and ate pad thai in front of her laptop, scrolling, always scrolling. She thought about her mother's voice on the phone last week. "You sound tired, honey. Are you eating enough vegetables?" Sarah had lied. Said she was fine. Said Bangkok was great. Didn't mention the weight she'd gained since arriving, or the way her clothes pulled tight across her middle, or the fact that her doctor back home had flagged her last blood work, pre-diabetic range, elevated cortisol, something about inflammation. Downstairs, she bought coffee from the 7-Eleven. Black, no sugar. Discipline, she told herself, but by 10 a.m. she'd have another, and another. Caffeine was the only thing that kept the fog at bay. At 7:30 a.m., walking to a co-working space 3 blocks away, she saw them. A line of women in white robes, barefoot, moving slowly down the Soai. Thai Buddhist nuns. Mei Chi, her neighbor, had called them once. Each carried a simple metal bowl, lidded, cradled close to their chests. They didn't hurry, didn't look at phones, didn't seem bothered by the heat already building or the motorbikes roaring past. One of them, older, maybe 60, her head shaved smooth, made eye contact with Sarah, just for a second. Her face was calm, not blank, not distant, just still. Her belly beneath the simple white fabric was flat, not in a starved way, in a way that looked natural, easy, like her body knew exactly what it needed and nothing more. Sarah looked away, embarrassed for staring, but something in that glance unsettled her. The nun looked rested, looked at peace, and Sarah, with her 8-hour sleep tracker and her expensive mattress and her entire life optimized for comfort, felt like a ghost. That evening she Googled Thai Buddhist nuns habits. The results were sparse. A few travel blogs, some photos of temples. Nothing scientific, nothing that explained why that woman's face had stayed with her all day, like a question she didn't know how to ask. She opened Instagram, scrolled past fitness influencers selling programs, past before and after photos that all looked the same, past promises of lose 10 pounds in 10 days. And the one trick doctors don't want you to know. She closed the app. Felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the sense that she was failing at something she couldn't even name. At 11 p.m. she was still awake, belly full of another late meal, mind spinning, heart beating too fast for no reason, except that it always did now, especially at night, especially when the city quieted and there was nothing left to distract her from the fact that she felt wrong. Not sick, not broken, just off. Like a machine running on the wrong fuel, wearing itself down in ways she couldn't see but could feel in every cell. She thought again of the nun, the bowl, the stillness. And for the first time in months, she wondered, what if the problem isn't that I'm not trying hard enough? What if it's that I'm trying in the wrong direction? If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last? Tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar. And stay with us for the next chapters. Part 2. Sarah didn't plan to go back to that swai, but the next morning she did. And the next. Always at 7:30 a.m. And always the same line of Mei Chi walking slowly through the neighborhood, receiving food from local Thais who knelt and offered rice, fruit, small plastic bags of vegetables. On the fourth morning, the older nun, Fra Sai, Sarah learned her name later, stopped near where Sarah stood with her coffee cup. She didn't speak, just inclined her head slightly, a gesture that felt like acknowledgement, like she'd noticed Sarah watching all week. Sarah's Thai co-worker, Nok, laughed when Sarah mentioned it at lunch. "You're interested in Mei Chi?" Nok asked, amused. "My aunt became one after her divorce, says it's the most peaceful she's ever felt. But they don't eat after noon, can you imagine?" "They don't eat after noon," Sarah repeated, something clicking in her mind. "At all. Nothing, just water. It's part of the discipline. They wake at 3:30 a.m. too. Meditate. Walk for alms. Eat once, maybe twice before midday, then fast until the next morning." Sarah thought about her own eating pattern. Breakfast skipped, coffee gulped, lunch grabbed between meetings, dinner late and heavy, snacks at midnight while scrolling. No rhythm, no structure. Just chaos, pretending to be freedom. That week, her friend Emily video called from San Francisco. Emily, who'd known Sarah since college, who'd watched her try keto and paleo and Whole30 and intermittent fasting apps that sent notifications Sarah ignored. "You look exhausted," Emily said bluntly. "Thanks," Sarah replied, defensive. "I'm serious. What's going on?" Sarah didn't know how to explain. That she'd been watching Buddhist Nuns, that she was thinking about eating Windows and cortisol, and the way her belly bloated every night no matter what she ate. It sounded absurd. Emily would laugh, or worse, she'd recommend another app, another diet, another fix Sarah already knew wouldn't work. "I'm fine," Sarah lied, "just adjusting." After the call, she sat on her balcony and stared at the street below. Motorbikes, street vendors, the smell of grilled meat and jasmine. She thought about the bowl Fra Sai carried. Simple, metal, just big enough for one meal. Not deprivation, design. The next morning, Sarah did something she hadn't planned. She woke at 5 a.m. Not because an alarm forced her, but because she set an intention. She didn't check her phone. She sat on her balcony in the dark, feeling the cool air before sunrise, and just breathed. No app, no guided meditation, just air in, air out. At 7:30 a.m., she walked to the SOI. This time, when Fra Sai passed, Sarah bowed her head slightly. The nun's eyes crinkled, a smile without words. That day, Sarah tried something radical. She ate breakfast, a real one. Rice porridge from a street vendor, warm and plain. Then nothing until noon. At 11:45 a.m., her stomach growled, and her mind screamed that she was starving, that this was extreme, that she'd fail. But at noon, she ate lunch. Rice, vegetables, a small piece of fish. She ate slowly, tasted everything, noticed when she was full, and then she stopped. By 3 p.m., the hunger had passed. Her energy didn't crash the way it usually did. She felt light, not empty, light. At 8 p.m., her body expected dinner. Her mind expected the ritual of food as comfort, as distraction. But she drank water instead, sat with the discomfort, realized it wasn't hunger, it was habit, it was boredom, it was the need to fill something that food couldn't actually fill. She went to bed at 10 p.m., earlier than she had in years. Her mind was quieter, not silent, but quieter. The next morning she woke at 5:15 a.m. without an alarm. Her body knew. And when she walked to the SOI at 7:30 a.m., Prasai was there, bowl in hand, face calm as always. Sarah bowed again, and the nun for the first time spoke. "You are learning," she said in accented English. The bowl does not demand, it only receives. Sarah didn't understand, not yet, but she felt something shift, like a door opening to a room she didn't know existed. Part 3, 2 weeks in, Sarah's jeans fit differently, not dramatically, but the waistband didn't cut into her belly when she sat. The bloating that had been constant, a permanent thickness above her hips, had softened. She stood in front of the mirror one morning and realized she looked less puffy. Her face, her hands, like she'd been holding water and finally let it go. Her sleep had changed too. She still woke once or twice, but she fell back asleep now. The 3 a.m. panic, heart racing, mind spinning through work scenarios that didn't matter, had faded. She woke at 5 a.m., most days without forcing it, and instead of feeling groggy, she felt awake. Actually awake. Not the jittery, caffeine-driven alertness she was used to. Something steadier. She'd started walking in the mornings before the arms round. Slow. Barefoot on the cool tile of her balcony, then in sandals down the sway. Not for exercise, just to move, to feel her body wake itself up without being shoved into it. The Mei Chi walked slowly every day, bowl in hand, and Sarah had started to understand why. Speed was aggression, slowness was trust, but her co-worker James didn't see it that way. "You're doing that weird fasting thing now?" he asked at a team lunch. Sarah had ordered soup and rice, small portions. She ate slowly, deliberately, aware of every bite the way Fra Sai had shown her, chopsticks lifting just enough, mouth closing, chewing fully before reaching for more. "It's not weird," Sarah said quietly. "It's just a structure." James laughed. "Dude, you're in Bangkok. The food here is insane. You're really not going to eat after noon. That's like disordered." Sarah felt the familiar heat of shame rise in her chest. The voice that said, "He's right. You're being extreme. You're failing again, just in a different way." But then she remembered something Fra Sai had said the week before, when Sarah asked her if fasting was hard. The nun had smiled and said, "The body is wise. We make it confused. We feed it when it is not hungry. We keep it awake when it wants sleep. We make it run when it needs rest. The bowl teaches us to listen." "It's not disordered," Sarah said to James more firmly now. "It's the opposite. I'm actually listening for the first time." He shrugged, unconvinced, and changed the subject. But Sarah felt the weight of his judgment for the rest of the day. That night, Emily texted, "James said you're not eating dinner now. Babe, are you okay?" Sarah stared at the message. She wanted to explain. About the Mei Chi, about the bowl, about how she'd spent years eating constantly and still felt empty, and now she ate less but felt fuller. About how her belly had finally started to flatten, not because she was starving it, but because she'd stopped flooding it with food her body didn't need or want. But explaining felt impossible, so she just wrote, "I'm good, trying something new, feels right." Emily's response came fast. "Just don't go too far, okay? You know how you get." Sarah closed the messages. "How I get." As if wanting to feel good in her own body was some kind of pathology. As if discipline was only valid if it came wrapped in gym memberships and protein shakes and apps that gamified suffering. That week, Sarah went to a clinic in Bangkok for a routine check. She hadn't planned to, but Nock had recommended a doctor who spoke English and didn't rush appointments. Dr. Somchai was in his 50s, calm and methodical. He ran blood work, fasting glucose, lipid panel, cortisol, inflammatory markers. When the results came back, he looked at Sarah with quiet surprise. "Your fasting glucose dropped," he said, "from 104 to 92. That's pre-diabetic to normal range. Triglycerides down. Cortisol still elevated, but lower than I'd expect for someone working your hours." He paused. "What have you been doing?" Sarah hesitated. "I changed when I eat, and I've been waking up earlier, walking more, not exercising, just moving." Dr. Somchai nodded slowly. "You've reduced eating window. I eat before noon, then I fast until morning, and sleep. Better, a lot better." He leaned back. The body likes rhythm. Cortisol is high in the morning to wake you, low at night to sleep you. When you eat all day, insulin stays high. Cortisol gets confused. Inflammation stays. The belly holds it. He tapped his own midsection. You gave your body a rhythm. It remembered how to work. Sarah felt something break open in her chest. Not from pride, from relief. She wasn't broken. She'd just been living in a way that made her body think it was always in crisis. Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. Part 4. The bowl became Sarah's anchor. Not Frasai's alms bowl. Sarah didn't have one of those, but she'd bought a small ceramic rice bowl from a shop near the temple. White, simple, just big enough to hold a proper portion without overflow. Every morning she filled it with rice, porridge or fruit. At midday, rice and vegetables, fish or tofu, soup sometimes. The bowl defined the boundary. Not her hunger, not her guilt, just the bowl. She ate from it slowly, the way she'd watched the Mei-Chi eat, aware of texture, temperature, the act of chewing, no phone, no laptop, just food and breath and the quiet knowledge that this was enough. Her mornings had shifted entirely now. She woke at 4:30 a.m. most days, before the city stirred. She didn't meditate in any formal way. No apps, no guided sessions. She just sat on her balcony and breathed. Cold air on her skin, the smell of jasmine from somewhere below, the distant sound of a temple bell. By 6 a.m. she walked, not for exercise, for rhythm. She'd started to notice how the Mei-Chi moved. Never rushed, never sluggish, just steady. She realized her whole life had been either sprinting or collapsing. No middle ground, no sustainable pace. The walking taught her there was a speed between urgency and stillness. At 7:30 a.m., she'd see Fra Sai and the other nuns on their arms round. Some mornings, Sarah joined the locals in offering food, rice, fruit, small things wrapped carefully. The act of giving felt strange at first, almost transactional. But Fra Sai had explained it once. We do not beg. We give you the chance to practice generosity. You give us the chance to practice gratitude. It is exchange. Sarah had never thought of it that way. She'd spent her whole life taking food, comfort, distraction. The bowl was teaching her to receive only what fit and to give away what didn't. But then her company announced a deadline shift. A project she'd been working on for months needed to be finished 2 weeks early. The client was demanding. The calls came at odd hours. Her team was stretched. For 3 days, Sarah slipped. She worked until midnight, ordered delivery at 11 p.m., ate in front of her screen, skipped her morning walk, woke at 7 a.m. instead of 4:30 a.m. Groggy and wired at the same time. By the third night, her belly was bloated again. Her sleep was broken. Her mind raced. She felt the old panic return, the sense that her body was betraying her, that she was failing, that everything she'd built was too fragile to survive real life. She sat on her balcony at 2 a.m., staring at the city lights, and thought about quitting. Not the job, the habits. Maybe James was right. Maybe this was just another phase. Maybe she was fooling herself. The next morning she didn't walk, didn't go to the SOI, just made coffee and opened her laptop. But at 7:45 a.m. someone knocked on her door. It was Nock. Fra Sai asked about you, Nock said, smiling. She said you haven't been walking. Are you okay? Sarah blinked, surprised. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She sees you every day. Something in Sarah's chest cracked. She'd thought she was invisible in this city. Another foreigner, another face. But Fra Sai had seen her, had cared enough to ask. That afternoon, Sarah left work early. She walked to the temple where the Mei-Chi lived, a small compound with a meditation hall and simple living quarters. Fra Sai was sweeping the courtyard, slow and methodical. When she saw Sarah, she set the broom aside. Sit, she said, gesturing to a low bench. Sarah sat. She didn't know what to say. But Frasai didn't need words. "You are afraid," the nun said calmly. "You think the habit will break. You think you will break." Sarah nodded, eyes stinging. "The bowl does not demand perfection," Frasai continued. "Some days it is full, some days it is empty, some days you forget it entirely, but the bowl is still there, waiting, not judging, just waiting." Sarah exhaled, a long, shaky breath. "The rhythm is not a punishment," Frasai said. "It is a kindness. When you lose it, you come back. That is all." Sarah went home that night and ate her last meal before noon the next day. She woke at 4:30 a.m. again. She walked, she sat in the cool air and breathed, and the rhythm returned. Not perfectly, but it returned. Part 5. 6 weeks after she'd first seen Frasai, Sarah sat in Dr. Somchai's office again. He'd called her in for a follow-up, and when he pulled up her latest blood work on the screen, he was quiet for a long moment. "Cortisol," he said finally, "is almost normal range now. Glucose steady at 88. Inflammatory markers, CRP, down by 40%. Triglycerides excellent, HDL up." He looked at her. "You've changed something fundamental, not just food, not just sleep, something deeper." Sarah nodded slowly. "I stopped fighting my body," she said. "I started listening." Dr. Somchai smiled. "Most people never learn that. They think health is war. You learned it is rhythm." That night, Sarah sat on her balcony with her small ceramic bowl. Empty. She'd eaten hours ago. Rice, steamed vegetables, a soft-boiled egg. The bowl had been enough. It was always enough. She thought about the past year, the diets, the apps, the late nights eating in front of screens, the constant sense that she was failing some invisible test, and she realized she'd been treating her body like an enemy, something to control, something to punish, something to force into submission. But the Mei Qi had shown her something else. That discipline wasn't domination, it was devotion. That the body wasn't a machine to be optimized. It was a living system that needed rhythm, rest, simplicity, and respect. The flat belly she'd wanted so desperately, it had come, but not because she'd starved herself or exercised obsessively. It had come because she'd stopped flooding her system with cortisol, because she'd given her nervous system permission to relax, because she'd created an environment where her body didn't think it was in constant danger. She remembered something Frasai had said a few days earlier when Sarah asked why the nuns all seemed so calm. "We do not fight the mind," Frasai had explained. "We give it structure. Wake at the same time. Walk at the same time. Eat at the same time. The mind is like a child. It needs boundaries to feel safe. When it feels safe, it stops screaming." Sarah had never thought of it that way. She'd thought discipline was restriction, but it was the opposite. Discipline was the gift of a predictable rhythm in a chaotic world. And when her nervous system finally trusted that rhythm, everything else followed. Sleep deepened. Hunger regulated. Inflammation dropped. The belly softened. The real secret wasn't in the fasting or the walking or the cold showers she'd started taking in the mornings. The secret was in the why. Every habit the Mei Qi practiced was designed to calm the nervous system, to signal safety, to tell the body, you are not in danger, you can rest, you can repair, you can let go. Western culture had taught Sarah that stress was normal, that burnout was a badge of honor, that her body's constant state of emergency was just being busy. But the Mei Qi knew differently. They knew that a body stuck in fight or flight stores fat, disrupts sleep, inflames organs, and ages fast. They knew that peace wasn't a luxury. It was biology. Sarah picked up the bowl and ran her fingers along its smooth edge. She thought about how much she'd resisted at first, how extreme it had seemed. 1 meal a day, waking before dawn, fasting for hours. But now it felt like the most natural thing in the world, because it wasn't about deprivation, it was about alignment. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emily. You look different in your photos. Lighter. What's going on? Sarah smiled. She thought about trying to explain. About cortisol and circadian rhythms and vagal tone, and how a small ceramic bowl had become the most important object in her apartment. But instead, she just wrote, I stopped trying to control everything, started trusting my body instead. Emily's response, that's so woo-woo, but honestly, you do look happier. Sarah laughed quietly. Maybe it was woo-woo, or maybe it was just the oldest wisdom in the world, dressed in white robes and carried in a simple metal bowl. That weekend, Sarah visited the temple again. Frasai was in the meditation hall, sitting with a few other Mai Chi. Sarah joined them, sitting on a cushion in the back. She didn't know the chants, didn't understand the Pali words, but she felt the vibration in her chest, felt her breath slow, felt her mind, for the first time in years, go quiet without force. After, Frasai walked her to the gate. You understand now, the nun said. It wasn't a question. I think so, Sarah replied. It was never about the weight. It was about the war inside me. Frasai nodded. The belly holds what the heart cannot release. You release the war. The belly followed. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. All those years, all that suffering, and the answer had been so simple, not easy, but simple. Stop fighting, start listening, create rhythm, trust the body. The bowl had taught her, you don't need to carry more than fits, and when you only take what fits, there's finally room to breathe. On part 6, 3 months later, Sarah stood in her apartment folding laundry. It was a small task, mundane, but she'd started to notice how differently she moved through it now, slowly, without rushing, her hands smoothing the fabric, her breath even, no podcast in her ears, no TV in the background, just the sound of cotton against cotton and the distant hum of Bangkok traffic below. Her body had changed in ways that went beyond the scale. Her jeans were loose now, not in a dramatic transformation photo way, but in a way that felt sustainable. Her belly was flat most days, soft on others. She'd stopped obsessing over it, stopped checking the mirror 5 times a day. The flatness wasn't the goal anymore, the peace was. She slept 7 hours most nights and woke rested. Her skin had cleared, the puffiness in her face was gone. But the biggest change was invisible. Her nervous system had learned to trust her again. The panic attacks had stopped. The 3 a.m. heart racing had faded. The constant low-grade anxiety that had been her baseline for years, gone. Dr. Somchai had sent her latest results with a note. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. These are the numbers of someone 10 years younger. She'd framed the note, not because she was proud in a boastful way, but because it was evidence that her body hadn't been broken, just exhausted, just asking for rhythm, and she'd finally listened. Her relationship with food had transformed entirely. She still ate from the small ceramic bowl, still kept her eating window before noon, but it didn't feel like a rule anymore. It felt like a conversation. Some days she ate twice, some days once. Some days she broke the rhythm entirely and ate dinner with friends, and the next morning she'd wake at 4:30 a.m., walk to the SOI and come back. No guilt, no shame, just return. Frasai had been right. The bowl didn't demand perfection. It just waited. James had stopped making comments after he'd seen Sarah's energy stabilize. He'd even asked her about it once, awkwardly. That fasting thing you do, does it actually work? She'd just smiled. It's not about fasting, it's about rhythm. He didn't understand, but he'd noticed the change. Everyone had. Emily visited Bangkok in the fall. She walked into Sarah's apartment and stopped, looking around. You reorganized, she said. A little, Sarah replied. But it was more than that. She'd stripped the apartment down, fewer things, clearer surfaces, a single plant by the window. The bedroom cool and dark at night, curtains open at dawn to let in light. The environment itself had become part of the rhythm. You seem different, Emily said carefully. Calmer. I am. Is it the nun thing? Sarah laughed. It's not a thing, It's just, she paused, searching for words. I learned that my body isn't the enemy. And once I stopped treating it like one, it stopped acting like one. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm jealous. You don't have to be. You could. I know, Emily interrupted. I know I could, but I'm not ready. Not yet. Sarah understood. She'd been there. There was a moment when you had to choose, keep fighting, or surrender to a different way. She'd chosen surrender, and it had saved her. 2 weeks later, Sarah sat on her balcony at 5 a.m. The city was still dark, but the sky was beginning to lighten. She held her small ceramic bowl, empty, in her hands. She thought about the year before, how desperate she'd been, how lost, how certain she was broken. And now, sitting in the cool air, belly flat, mind quiet, heart steady, she realized she'd never been broken. She'd just been living in a way that made her body think the world was ending, and the Meiji had shown her how to tell her body, it's okay. You're safe. You can rest now. The bowl, simple and white, sat in her lap. It had taught her the most important lesson of all, that peace and health weren't destinations to achieve through force. They were rhythms to return to, again and again, with patience and grace. Somewhere below, a temple bell rang softly. Sarah closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and felt, for the first time in years, completely at home in her own skin. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.